A surge in retail sales supports the need for another rate rise. 6 former Prime Ministers unite to call for peace, and the Matildas effect helps boost the sales of beer. Welcome to Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. It's Tuesday, the 31st of October 2023. I'm Adam Lang, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Adam. Love it when you're hitting November. Only a day off. Almost Christmas. Very exciting.
And in between now and then, Sean, haven't we got Halloween?
We have got Halloween. That's tonight. I thought that my youngest would be past it. She informs me she's not.
There's fun to be had on the streets.
That's right.
Immediately after the show, stay listening for Sean's chat with Mark Kendall, the founder and CEO of Optimo.
So Optimo is a health tech company. It uses wearable tech that sits within a hair's width of skin, not within, actually in skin, a hair's width within skin. It basically, because it sits on the skin, it allows a lot more data to be collected. It's got amazing uses across the spectrum, sport, obviously, particularly around hydration, those sorts of things, the military, health, of course. The company's got some oomph when it comes to backers as well. It's a very interesting chat with Mark all about Optimo.
Sean, is it just for elite athletes, or could someone, say, like me, use their help?
Oh, don't put yourself down. Of course it's for elite athletes like you.
All right. I look forward to listening after the show. But the main story this morning, retail sales are coming back to life, with September marking the biggest monthly increase since the beginning of the year.
Sales were up by nearly 1%. Might not sound much, but it's worth about $145 million, so nothing to be sneezed at. There were a few reasons for it. A warmer than usual start to spring helped department stores, household goods and clothing retailers. There was also more spending on hardware, gardening and clothing items. Then there were specific items. The release of a new iPhone model helped turnover. So too the introduction of the Climate Smart Energy Savers rebate program in Queensland. There was changes to the pharmaceutical benefit scheme, meant you could actually get 60-day prescriptions rather than just 30-day prescriptions. All in all, though, is the largest monthly jump since January. Now, having said that, retail sales have been very subdued this year. In trend terms, sales are up just 1.5% over the past year. Now, that's the smallest increase in the history of the series. Still, September was definitely a very positive month for retail sales.
Sean, that is welcome news, and I hesitate to ask, but what do yesterday's figures mean for interest rates?
Well, if you're a retiree relying on term deposit income, it's great news, Adam.
Oh, well, that's something.
However, if you have a mortgage, maybe not. That's basically another way of saying that the retail trade figures add to the case for a rate rise when the Reserve Bank Board meets in a week's time. Even those who don't think there needs to be a rate rise are now getting on board. Our resident economist, Stephen Koulis, in yesterday's Week Ahead, he said that the retail sales figures are more important than normal simply because, there's so much uncertainty around rate rises. If they're strong, that will certainly push the Reserve Bank to do it. One of the more interesting notions running around too at the moment is that new Governor Michelle Bullock will be keen to demonstrate her inflation fighting credentials. So that adds weight to the argument that there will be a rate rise next week. Not sure how true that one is, but all in all, I think the market really does believe rates are going up next Tuesday. And yesterday's retail sales figures just sort of support that case.
Sean, amongst that big news, how did local markets perform yesterday?
Well, not very well. The S&P ASX 200 closed down 0.8% to 6,773 points. That's a new 12-month low. Fears about what's going on in the Middle East and a poor close to Wall Street last week weighed on the local bourse. So too did fears of further rate rises after the retail sales figures. And bond yields remain relatively high. They're currently an attractive alternative to equities. Put all that together, you see the market falling. In fact, after yesterday's fall, the market is now officially in correction territory, defined as at least 10% below its most recent peak. That peak was back in January. Yesterday, the banks led the way lower, with National Australia Bank off 1.7%, whilst Commonwealth Bank fell 1.4%. The big energy players, Woodside and Santos, both fell more than 2%, while Woolies was another poor performer. IGO shares fell 9%, the worst of the top 200, after the company warned that volatility in the lithium market would impact spodumene sales. The Star Entertainment was also down 9%. Now, it's trading just a bit above 50 cents a share at the moment. It's about 15% of what it was 2 years ago. Among the best performers yesterday were Nine Entertainment, Xero and Goodman Group, all up around a couple of percent. In other corporate news, Aussie Broadband has made a binding offer worth up to $258 million to buy software group Symbio. Aussie Broadband is now the country's fourth biggest internet provider, ahead of Vocus Group.
Sean, you mentioned the Australian Stock Exchange entered correction territory. What's happening in international markets?
Well, the Wall Street has also entered correction. Well, the Nasdaq is down about 12% since its peak, and Wall Street's also off. It's tumbled a lot in the last couple of months, but it's also in correction territory. So, not good news on those markets. Oil prices pared back a little yesterday, down about 2%. Israel's moved into parts of Gaza, more of that later, but not quite as aggressively as financial markets had feared. That took some of the pressure off the oil price. Gold's trading above $2,000 an ounce. The Aussie dollar's buying 63.5 US cents, Adam, while Bitcoin is trading at over $34,000 a unit.
Is Bitcoin going against the trend?
So, it's a really good question. We need to get someone on to explain Bitcoin, why it is doing so well, because it's a risk-off strategy. You think the geopolitics would make Bitcoin less attractive. The idea that interest rates in the US may still have to, well, not so much rise too much more, but not fall for quite a while, probably supports Bitcoin. But maybe we need an expert in the next little bit to come and tell us why Bitcoin's doing so well.
I find it fascinating.
Yeah, the other big thing, there's a weight of cryptocurrency money in Bitcoin. So among cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin is sort of a store of value. It's the safest of the cryptos. So if you're holding some of those other ones and you want to keep holding crypto, moving into Bitcoin isn't a bad idea.
Wow, fascinating. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Yesterday, we said there was hope that an Australia-European Union trade deal could be pulled off. Today, it's clear there's been no breakthrough, and any deal is likely still to be years away.
Yes, the Albanese government said the current impasse could not be overcome by Christmas. Next year, there are EU parliamentary elections, so that will also delay things. So-called geographical indicators are among the sticking points. Those rules would stop Australian producers from being able to label products with European names like Prosecco or Feta. Agriculture Minister Murray Watt said the delay would likely extend past the current term of Australia's federal parliament, pushing it to after the next federal election, which is due in early 2025. The original talks date back to the Turnbull's coalition government. Still a long way to go. Which brings me to the point, Adam.
Yes.
There is one food group, it's not even a food group, a specific food, which I cannot stand. Like, I can't actually see, let alone smell.
Oh, wow. Powerful. Okay.
And it is feta. I can't do it.
What?
Yeah, no. So you go out, avocado on toast and they spring it with feta and I have to leave the table. I can't abide it.
That's that strong a reaction.
And no disrespect to those feta producers out there. Good on them. Everyone else seems to love it. So it must be me that's the odd person out.
Now, moving on, Sean, 6 former prime ministers have released a statement calling for the release of all hostages held by Hamas and expressing solidarity with Jewish Australians.
John Howard, Kevin Rudd, Julia Gillard, Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull and Scott Morrison also said Palestinian Australians deserve our love and support. They called for all Australians to be treated with love and respect, and I quote, "Our nation's success depends on us not allowing conflict overseas to turn Australians against each other. We condemn the cruel and murderous attack on Israeli families by Hamas. The Hamas terrorists thought to horrify and intimidate the people of Israel, shaking that nation's faith in its technology, its military, its government. But they also sought to provoke Israel into a reaction that would kill countless innocent civilians in Gaza. The Hamas terrorists have no more interest in the safety of Palestinians than they do of Israel." It's very well said. Just the only living Prime Minister not to sign that was Paul Keating.
Sean, Qantas has defended the sale of 8,000 seats on flights that had already been cancelled, saying customers buy a bundle of flights, not a specific flight, when they book to travel.
In documents filed with the federal court yesterday, the airline responded to the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission's claims that the national carrier had deceived customers when it sold the tickets. Qantas said it was not selling a particular flight, but writes consistent with Qantas's promise to do its best to get consumers where they want to be on time. When the competition regulator made its claim, the airline was already struggling with customer anger at cancelled or delayed flights, high airfares and poor service. Subsequently, Chief Executive Alan Joyce, of course, has left. Richard Goyder, the chair, he'll retire next year. So that's all the background. Now, the reason Qantas said they couldn't remove flights from sale, even though they had been cancelled and people were buying them, is due to system limitations. Now, part of that was because people change flights so often, also because of the numbers of flights involved. Very, very complex. That's according to the carrier. Now, I'm not sure of the legal ins and outs of this one, but in my mind, I just don't know that systems problems passes the pub test. It's going to be a very big week for Qantas. Started yesterday, finishes with the group's AGM, the general meeting, on Friday.
Sean, whenever I've booked a flight, I've actually always intended to buy a particular flight.
Yes, funny that. Me too. I always pick the time specifically, thinking that's what I need to be on. I don't tend to book and think that I'm buying a bunch of flights consistent with Qantas's promise to do its best to get consumers to where I want to be.
Interesting. We'll see how that AGM goes. The Matildas effect resulted in more than one keg of beer sold every minute at Endeavour Group pubs during the women's football team's quarterfinals and semi-finals in August. What a figure.
It was actually 1.2 kegs every minute.
Oh, wow.
Officially. Go the Matildas. They're very sporty, right? A bunch of very fit, athletic people. I just don't reckon the people watching them were. There were 1.2 kegs every minute. Endeavour's pub arm sales rose nearly 3% during the September quarter, helped by, of course, the Matildas. It was driven mostly by food and bar sales. Father's Day was particularly popular this year for some reason. Across the group, Endeavour posted a 2.1% jump in quarterly sales. The search for value was notable during the quarter. Now, the growth disappointed investors and prompted boss Steve Donoghue to say the group will wind back the purchase of new pubs as it tries to lift shareholder returns. Endeavour, of course, owns 1,700 liquor stores, Dan Murphy's and BWS, and a network of 354 pubs. Mainstream beer, rosé, and pre-mixed drinks did best during the quarter, less spent on gaming. Interestingly enough, Endeavour faces a rowdy annual general meeting today as its largest shareholder, pubs billionaire Bruce Matheson Sr., attempts to get his candidate, Bill Wavish, appointed to the board. That's against the wishes of the chairman. Will be an interesting one to watch. Of course, we'll have all the news in the afternoon report.
Sean, it seems that everyone loves rooftop solar, but there's a more sinister side to it all, with fears a cyber attack on the system could cripple the country's energy system.
It's kind of interesting. Australia has the world's largest penetration of rooftop solar, and obviously that will be very important as we shift away from coal. But the rise in solar has created a security flaw with the bulk of solar inverters. They're the things that convert the power from solar panels into energy. Bulk of those inverters are made in China and are connected to the internet, according to a report in The Australian. Canberra's relationship with Beijing is improving, definitely, but security officials are concerned that China controls a critical component, particularly as the world is decarbonising. Cyber attacks previously have been launched from China. That's what people are worried about. Recently, the Secretary of Australia's Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water said the threat to solar inverters is significant and work is underway to mitigate the prospect of significant harm. There have been early talks with the Australian energy market operator about a technical solution that could be applied in the event of a successful cyber attack.
Sean, we turn now to international news, and Israeli forces have stepped up their ground offensive in the Gaza as fears of a humanitarian crisis continue to grow.
Israel appears to be holding positions inside northern Gaza after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared the second stage of the country's war to destroy Hamas had begun. Israeli officials have said the campaign will last anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months. Netanyahu, though, has come under attack internally for not accepting responsibility for failing to anticipate the October 7 attack by Hamas. Over the weekend, posts on social media, later deleted, suggest he blames security chiefs for the lapse.
Sean, Russian Defence Minister Sergei Shoigu said his country is ready for talks on a settlement to the war with Ukraine.
Speaking in Beijing, Shoigu also said Russia was ready for talks on further coexistence with the West, according to a report on Reuters. He accused the West of wanting to expand the war in Ukraine to the Asia-Pacific region. Shoigu said NATO was concealing a build-up of forces in the Asia-Pacific region with an ostentatious desire for dialogue, according to media reports. He accused NATO countries of promoting an arms race in the region and increasing their military presence and increasing the frequency and scale of military drills there. Now, obviously, he was talking to his audience. He's talking about the Asia-Pacific region while in China. But just the fact that he said his country is ready for talks on a settlement with Ukraine, I'm sure there'll be all sorts of conditions in that. Just not sure that we've heard that before.
No, there has to be some hope there.
Yeah.
Sean, Ford Motor Company in Detroit has done a deal with United Auto Workers, ending a 6-week strike. And part of the deal is record raises for workers.
In fact, Ford will invest about $8 billion to end the strike, and the union is calling it a huge victory. Now, let me lay out some of the details. It appeared on Bloomberg. A 25% raise over 4 years, 8 months. Fair enough. The end of wage tiers, which means the lowest paid workers will get an immediate pay rise of 88%.
Wow.
A $5,000 ratification bonus. $1,500 vouchers towards a new vehicle purchase. There's more money for superannuation, an extra day off a year, 2 weeks paid parental leave. We think that's normal here, not so normal in the US. And I love this one, the right to strike over future plant closures. So if Ford decides to close a plant, they've got the right to strike. Amazing deal. Well, good on the union for getting their workers that.
Well, let's hope that everyone is happy at the conclusion of this deal. It's taken a long time to get here.
It sure has.
Up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview with Mark Kendall. He's the founder and CEO of Optimo.
Yep, all about the health tech company and its wearable technology and what that can do, the data it can elicit from people wearing it, what that means for rehydration, for sports people, for military, all sorts of uses. Great chat with Mark.
Sean, I'll take any tips. I'll be listening. That's up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your favourite podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you very much, Adam.
It's Tuesday, the 31st of October, 2023. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X and Facebook. I hope you have a great day.